The new Canon G7X Mark III or the Mark II? Which one should you buy? How's it going? My name is Jussi, I'm a freelance filmmaker and this channel is all about videography and video editing tips and tutorials without wasting your time. In this video I'll help you decide whether you should get the Canon G7X Mark III or the Canon G7X Mark II. I'll go through the great features that they both have in common, the pros and the cons of the G7X Mark III, and which one of the two cameras do I prefer and why. If you're not yet familiar with the older model G7X Mark II, you can go and watch my previous review from here. Also, I've got both of the cameras linked in the description below if you're interested in buying either one of them. Okay, let's start by talking about what's actually good about both of the cameras. The flip-up screen is fantastic for vlogging or talking head videos like this one, because you can actually see if your face is on focus or if the framing is good. They both have great in-body image stabilization, which is good for getting great stable handheld footage even if you're not very comfortable holding the camera, and also to get some cool camera movements without using a gimbal. And of course, the one thing that almost all Canon cameras are very well known for, they both have great color science straight out of camera, and you don't have to necessarily do any color grading. The skin tones and all the colors look very good straight out of camera. Another very important thing that separates the Canon G7X series from its competitors from Sony is the very easy to use and intuitive menus. All the settings are very easy to find and the touchscreen works perfectly and there's almost no learning curve. Both the G7X Mark III and the Mark II have got inbuilt ND filters, which are basically like sunglasses for your camera, which allows you to get better background blur. This is because you can keep your aperture wide open without getting your image overexposed. Now let's talk about what are the not so good things about the new Canon G7X Mark III. First of all, the autofocus is contrast-based autofocus instead of the Canon's famous dual pixel autofocus. And because of that reason, the autofocus is very slow and not reliable at all. Also, when filming in the 120 frames per second slow motion mode, there's no autofocus at all, and there are a lot of overheating issues when you're filming with the camera for a longer period of time. This might lead to the problem that it overheats and you can't use it for a while. Also, the Canon G7X Mark III doesn't have the option to film in 24 frames per second at all, which is ridiculous because almost all the older Canon models, including the Canon G7X Mark II, has the option to film in 24 frames per second. Now this might be a huge deal breaker for those who edit their videos in 24 frames per second to get that nice cinematic motion blur and cinematic look. However, if you switch the format from NTSC to PAL, you have the option to film in 25 frames per second, which is fairly close to the 24 frames per second. And the way I see it is that these small point-and-shoot cameras are best for beginner vloggers, YouTubers, or the average Joe who is just casually filming his kids on a holiday. And because of these shortcomings of the new Canon G7X Mark III, it makes it very hard for me to recommend it for those kind of people. But wait a minute, how about the good things about the Canon G7X Mark III? There must be some good things about it, right? Well, actually the 4K image is very sharp and it's got a great dynamic range, which is fantastic because the image to me is one of the most important things about a camera. Not only does 4K give you better image quality, but it also gives you the option to zoom in and change the crop of the video in post-production. It's also got this microphone jack which allows you to attach an external microphone for better audio when vlogging or when you're filming these talking head videos like I am. Another cool feature that they finally added to the Mark III is the 120 frames per second slow motion. Now there is one downside. it doesn't have autofocus at all. And this might be a deal breaker for most of you guys. So which one is better, the Canon G7X Mark III or the older Canon G7X Mark II? Which one should you get? Well, like I said before, I believe that these small point-and-shoot cameras are mainly meant for beginner vloggers, YouTubers, or casual users. And usually, those kind of people, those kind of users are looking for a camera that allows you to capture moments on the go as easily as possible with decent enough features. So for those kind of users, I recommend the G7X Mark II because of the Mark III's lack of decent autofocus, major overheating issues, and the lack of 24 frames per second. Also, if you're on a small budget, the G7X II costs only around $500, whereas the Mark III costs around $750. If you want to start learn filmmaking, you're probably better off just buying a mirrorless camera or a DSLR with interchangeable lenses, because that way you can change the lenses to get different kind of cinematic looks. Now, all that being said, the G7X Mark III might be the better option for you if you're looking for a great sharp 4K image with great dynamic range. You don't mind the slower contrast-based autofocus. You want 120 frames per second slow motion, and it doesn't matter to you even if it doesn't have autofocus. And if you don't film for long periods of time, then the overheating issue won't be a problem for you. And of course, if you film, for example, in 25 frames per second or 30 frames per second, then the lack of 24 frames per second doesn't matter for you at all. Then in that case, the G7X Mark III is a great option for you. If you found this video helpful and want to learn more about videography and video editing tips and tutorials, subscribe to my channel and click the bell notification so you won't miss any of my new videos. Thanks for watching and see you next Monday. Take care.